Thank you guys so much for taking the time to be on my podcast. I really appreciate it. Absolutely love your music. Incredibly talented group of cults. We got Patrick, we got Emilio. Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Problem. Is there anything you want to promote before we get started?
Oh,
Well,
well,
I mean, probably just next round of shows that we got going on.
Is it like another legged tour, or are you guys just kind of going boop 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 like different?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
So we're the next round, at least that's scheduled right now, is Convergence, which is Convergence number 27. I believe there's been a bunch of Convergence festivals prior in various cities, and they stopped during COVID, and this is going to be the first one back since COVID.
Wow.
And Denver won the bid for that. So looking forward to jumping on that. We got that in mid-August.
Yep.
Then I know we head out to Reno. Patrick probably knows all these club names because I'm terrible at remembering them. But on our way back to Los Angeles to play in Los Angeles as well. Patrick, I don't know if you want to rattle off venues if you know them.
oh, my brain at 10 a.m. is not working right
No,
now.
you're. Let
We're at Slipper Clutch in Los Angeles on August 16th. And then August 14th, we're in Reno, but that has not been basically all of these dates really haven't been announced, so we probably shouldn't be mentioning them
oh,
outside of
shit.
Convergence. Because they could always be canceled, and then
Yeah.
we'd just be like, okay, we just promoted shows that didn't happen. So, Convergence 27 will be in Denver. I would say, like, if we're promoting anything right now, our new album Rituals came out late last year, and we've been touring that for the first half of this year, which was a lot of fun, and we're currently in the midst of writing new music, hopefully for another album maybe next year, but we'll see. We're just getting started on that.
All right, right on. Is there anything you want to divulge into that, like any influences or kind of where you're going in the direction of this new album? Anything you want to spill, or is it everything still kind of in the ether?
I mean, I would say that there's a lot of influences that have been coming out. I mean, we sitting back and some of the songs that are on Rituals are quite a few years old for us, and so we want to be able to start exploring new territory. I know personally I wanted to start diving more into more synth based, a little bit more in terms of, I guess, the synths. Been diving a lot into old catalogs, back catalogs of some of our favorite bands from like the 80s and stuff. Just pulling some different influences. Still want to make it which funny, Patrick and I just talked about this the other day. It was like still making it occults,
Yeah.
But definitely having the influence from some of our prior influences growing up and stuff too.
Anything like specific, industrial, like Skinny Puppy, or is it more like 80s
Um,
type?
we've been wanting to dive more into, I don't want to say industrial because it's like when I think industrial, I think like the heavier side of industrial music. But I definitely like a lot of the more organic industrial sounds.
German and
I
Berlin and stuff like that.
yeah, I mean, well, even if you look back into like Depeche Mode's Construction Time Again album, where there was a lot of these like sounds that they were recording from just like construction sites and stuff like that. Like I love that type of influence in the music. Um, and so, I mean, I think the new music is going to be different enough to where it shows growth, but not sound not like us, you know?
Well, with Patrick being the drummer, and a lot of that is very organic and very industrial, are you wanting to go more like, hey, let's set up a mic in front of like a metal pipe or any, like, is there being a percussionist, and I'm a drummer myself, Is there anything that you've been thinking about bringing to that album, Patrick?
Exactly that. I mean, there's some stuff that we experimented on the track Depeche Mode where, we wanted the song to kind of authentically sound like a Depeche Mode song.
So close too. You guys did a really
Yeah.
good job on that.
And because I'm a film editor, I had all of these, horror sound effects at my disposal. And so I had sent Emilio a folder of sound effects that were like metallic or like pipe or whatever. So things that were like in that vein of that era of Depeche Mode. And so yeah, I was really into that direction. We did a little bit more of that on the song Truth or Desire.
Yeah.
And so, and Truth or Desire was the last song that we wrote on Ritual. So it's sort of a nice bridge to like where I think we're probably going. And we're both like, we're both like sort of like, dance club, fans
Sure, yeah.
at
Sure.
our core. And so we want to kind of do more that's like a little more, goth dance club heavy. And we have a few of those with Depeche Mode and probably Crystal Coffins, but like so mixing that vibe where it's like kind of like and more aggressive too. I think we're definitely like eager to where we started was more kind of like post punky, and then with the Rituals album, we went more dark gothic, and I think now we're kind of just in this more aggressive industrial type of vibe that we're both eager to go and explore.
That would be awesome to hear. I like to hear your guys' kind of interpretation of, what you can bring to the table. And even I've noticed that a lot more people I talk with who are kind of in the sort of dark wave or post punky, they're going, audiences react a lot more when you got them in a dance frenzy. So it's one of those things where, there's this balance of how can I get people reacting, dancing, having a good time versus just where can we kind of have a balance of emotion and the sort of artistic integrity, that kind of thing where it's you don't want to get like too poppy, but you're like, I want people to react when we come up on stage, kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean
Yeah.
we had originally for the we've only been occults now for 4 years.
Yeah.
And the first 3.5 years, we were essentially making music in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So we had no idea of how people would react to these things. And then we started getting videos from like goth clubs around the country, where the DJs were filming and showing us, like, hey, we're playing your song tonight. And then we started to get a better idea of how people were reacting. And then playing live, even more so. Because like now we've only been playing live for 6 months. And going from town to town, and you might have a down night where people just want to sit back and vibe to it,
Yeah.
but more often than not,
Mhm.
the bodies are moving, and like so you get a better sense of what they're responding to.
Yeah.
And I think that will also probably be driving us in our songwriting going forward.
Yeah. Cool.
And I think that you brought up a good point with like the pop elements and stuff like that. I mean, it's Patrick and I have written, what is essentially pop music for our entire careers. And I think that the term pop gets kind of a bad rap just because of what has been about. But I think that at our core, we're still going to write music that's hooky, stuff that's going to have earworms. That's one of the things if you go and listen to a lot of those Depeche Mode albums, and I mean, I go for all of them, it's like there's almost every instrumental element besides the vocals also have their own hooks to them, something that you walk away humming in your head. And I think that that's a goal for myself, especially when it comes to writing and when it comes to guitar parts and stuff like that. Like I like having those earworms in all of our music. So I by all means do not take offense when the term pop is thrown around in our music, because for me it's just like Is it stuck in your head? Well, then we did our job.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to write anything that's forgettable.
Right, of course.
So it's, it's a curse, but like, I mean, we've always, at our core, we've always wanted to write music that we both enjoy.
Yeah.
That was our goal,
Mhm.
because we'd been in a previous band 20 years ago, and we spent $9,000 making an album that, like, I can't even listen to half of it.
I hate that, dude.
Yeah. And so starting Occults
Yeah.
very early on, we were like, we are not going to make the same mistakes. And so one of our big things when it comes to songwriting is we both have to love it.
Yes.
And it has to be something that both of us can listen to multiple times and not get sick of. And to our detriment, like that has caused a rift sometimes between us, but we're brothers, we're best friends, like we get over it. And like that, but I think you get a better product because of that.
Absolutely.
And I'll go even further with that, because there are songs on Rituals that, like, I was not happy. I don't want to say happy, but like I wasn't like 100% happy with, like, as we were wrapping up the album. And like now that we're like playing shows, we played Dark Force Fest, and this woman came up to us and she said, you played my two favorite songs tonight. And I was like, what's that? And they were the two songs that I was the most unsure about on the album.
I love it.
And so that blew me away. And so that, I think that is a little sign that, like, we're doing the right thing. That, like, because we as creatives, we are, we're always going to be our biggest critics, but like we're still putting the work in, and because of that, people are connecting with it the way that they want to connect with it.
Absolutely. How was Dark Force Fest for you guys? I always like bringing that up, because I was really promoting you guys, and you guys toured through St. Louis and everything like that. How was Dark Force Fest for you guys?
It was, I think like the the end of the set really kind of like set it up for me. And I think there's a video somewhere of like the last thing that I said, and like that was the best way to end that leg of shows that we did. Because I mean, I think in every, when you're touring, it's like not every show is going to be perfect, and pretty much there's going to be something wrong with every show one way or another. And that was one of just, it felt like, okay, this is what we've built up to. And we went from doing a big show in Denver with Vision Video and Calabrese, and Zombies, and that was a big show, don't get me wrong, but it was like then going doing St. Louis, we do Columbus, and going to New Jersey and doing Dark Force was like a totally different vibe, and beyond, I mean, it went beyond my expectations in every way, shape, and form. And like I was like grinning ear to ear from that, and again, it's funny because when you're on the road and you're getting back home, you're like, oh man, I'm so thankful to be home. But then it's like within a week, I'm like, I need to go back out again. I need to go do this again, because Dark Force just had such a good reception, like beyond what we expected, with the crowd and with the merchandise. Our merch line was, I think it was like 45 minutes that people were in line for, and signing stuff and meeting new people. We met so many cool people while we were out there. I got a ton of friend requests when I came home, and just, I mean, exceeded all of my expectations. Patrick, you probably want to add on to that too.
And it was nerve-wracking because we were there. We were there for day one because we wanted to see friends of ours. We were watching sort of the flow of traffic, because it was really set up perfect. I don't know if I want to say perfectly, but it was set up nicely where it's like two ballrooms, and the crowd of traffic is just shifting from one to the other. And so we had been there, you know, the night before and watching people go back and forth, and so it's the hour before, and we're getting up ready to go, and we're like, what if nobody comes in? Like, what if, and you're like literally getting ready to get up on stage because they had the time slots were so locked in that you literally get ready to go up on stage, and there's like maybe like 15, 20 people there,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, well, I guess this is it. And it was like, by the time we finished our first song, it was packed from front to the back of the ballroom, and then it was like the energy hit because we go into our next song, which is Hot Crucible, and it just all of a sudden the energy just explodes. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
That's cool. No, that's one hell of a lineup. I mean, just you guys playing with Calabrese, Vision Video, dude. Dusty is the coolest guy ever.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
I've been trying to get them on, but yeah, Calabrese is one of those, like, I keep struggling. I'm like, come on, guys, I want to talk with you, but man, they're so incredibly talented. So that is a damn good lineup for a show. And then they all pretty much went, well, I think, was it minus Zombies, all went to Dark Force Fest. Am I right about that?
Well, Vision Video didn't do Dark Force
Okay,
this
okay.
year. Calabrese did. They were on Sunday. Um, and I hate the fact we had to get back. And so we kind of like Sunday morning we had to leave. And I was hoping that some of those bands were going to come in early so we can, catch up with them. But we didn't get a chance to see Calabrese, and I kind of like missed them a lot too whenever we were in Denver. Because I was with Dusty during that time, and just kind of catching up on stuff. And but that was, I mean, that show was so much fun. And just a great lineup. The energy was great. Everything about it was great.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and get some backstory for you guys. I don't, you guys can pick who starts first. Let's start with, growing up, where you grew up at, influences, and then how you started kind of getting into music and everything like that. Let's get a little bit of backstory so whoever wants to start first, go ahead.
Should I go?
Yeah, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I mean, we're both originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and we met in the fall of 2001, I think, the week after 9/11.
Yeah.
I think I think that's what I always remember about it, is they had this huge um telethon that like Bon Jovi had put together, and I remember it being on TV the night I met Emilio.
I remember that. That's so funny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so yeah, and I had a band and was looking. I'd been in a new metal band for a couple years.
What
And
band, if you don't mind me asking, unless you don't want to share it?
no, I don't want to name names,
Okay,
but
no, that's not good.
we
Oh, you're fine. You're good.
uh so I'd done that, and I was getting influenced by uh I was really into a girl, and she was like, you need to listen to this album, and it was Depeche Mode's Violator.
Ooh.
And so like that, and then The Cure, and Duran Duran, and then Prince, and all of these things were sort of combined. It was like basically a gateway. So it was like one thing after another thing after another thing, and everybody in high school is like really in the new metal, or they're starting to go into the pop punk. It was that kind of
Oh,
bridge right there. Um, and some mutual friends of mine were like, you got to meet this guy Emilio, and he went to a completely different school. And so that's how, so we got connected like that. But he was the only person that I knew that had shared interest, and that we were influenced by the same music.
it's such a Midwest thing where you associate people by what high school they went to. That is the most Midwest St. Louis
Yeah,
thing, that it's the best way to describe just living there, where it's like, oh, it's immediately where you go. What high school did you go to? So yeah, that's so funny.
it's such a big little city,
Yeah, it really is.
and I mean, oddly enough, I just went back to visit this past week, and
Cool.
it still feels the exact same. reminded me of why I moved in the first place. But um, yeah, it's funny that Patrick mentioned about like a girl getting him into like Depeche Mode and Violator and stuff like that. I was very much in a similar situation. In St. Louis, I was dating a girl. Um, Also was in a new metal band for some time, and I left that band and I didn't quite know what I was going to do. And the girl though that I was dating introduced me to the Cure's Disintegration album, and that was, I don't know, it was just like this thing that clicked for me. Where it's like, why have I not been doing this my entire life? Like this is amazing, and I love all of this stuff. And that kind of just dove into a deeper love for it. Because I mean, I'd always been into music, and I could still remember going to. I mean, there was one year that I think I was at every festival that came to town, whether it was like a Warped Tour or an Ozfest or something like that. And it's like I'd always been a fan of music, but it's like I never got to dive that far back to enjoy some of these bands. And it was like being, I think 16 at the time. And I'm like, oh, why am I just finding out about this music now? And it really kind of opened up a lot. And I think that that's where Patrick and I connect on so much, even like our tour playlist. It's like the amount of genres that it crosses through, from, these dark 80s bands to, even some of like what I would consider now like the old like adult contemporary stuff,
Of
or
course.
even yacht rock and stuff like that. It's like all of these influences that have like that he and I relate on in so many levels.
And the funny thing is that new metal, which we were both into,
Hmm.
was heavily influenced by bands like Duran Duran and Depeche Mode, David Bowie, you know. So it's like all those bands you go back, or you watch videos of them talking about their influences, and they were connected, but like at face value, you probably wouldn't see it, or that your casual Corn fan wouldn't recognize that either, or look at fucking Limp Bizkit, doing
Yeah,
Faith, like so. But I think the gateway for both of us on top of that was Orgy, because Orgy was connected with Corn, and I had, both of us had gone to Family Values tour and didn't know each other, and I had hung out back by their tour buses and just met Bobby Hewitt, the drummer from Orgy, and he was very cool and like gave us a poster and autographed it. And he said, "Come back after the show. The rest of the band will be here." And we met everybody. We met Jay Gordon and Amir and Ryan and all those guys. And like that was all of a sudden the thing. So I knew that I wanted to make a band that was like Orgy, and unfortunately it turned into just being a fucking new metal band, but that didn't go away. And then the other big thing that happened, that both of us happened to be at the same show at, was we saw this band from Chicago called Kill Hannah. And Kill Hannah at the time had not been signed. They were just a local Chicago band.
yep,
So like that, the three things for me was Orgy, Prince,
yep.
and
Kill Hannah.
Kill Hannah, because I had seen Purple Rain the winter before,
Yeah,
and I was like, I want a band like that. So it was like making a band that combined those things,
yeah.
and so that was my goal. And then meeting Emilio was like, this is another piece of the puzzle. And so he and I were essentially trying to put together this band for the longest time, and we eventually turned into the band Nothing Still,
Mhm.
and we never quite got there. And I think it's always just a part of like we had really great musicians, some of our best friends, but like we had to fit a mold in the St. Louis music scene because it was very heavily uh, pop punk and butt rock. And like
Like that.
how does electronic dance rock fit in there? And my favorite story of all time to tell is we were doing a radio interview, and the DJ was like, any songs you want us to play. And we were like, oh no, you just play whatever, fit. And she was like, have you heard this song by the band The Killers?
Mm-hmm.
And it was The Killers' first single, somebody told me. And it came on,
Okay.
and I was like, motherfuckers, they beat us to it. And that was like, now eventually the fucking Killers did
Yeah.
their own shit and
Yeah,
got
they moved
worse.
on
But like,
Americana.
yeah. But that first single, somebody
Oh,
told me, was like the thing that we're sitting in this radio station listening to this song going, what the fuck? Like that was the sound. That was the thing we were trying to do as Nothing Still. And so we just never really honed into this. And so when it came to Occults, I'm bringing it back full circle.
for
When
it,
it
yeah.
came to Occults, Emilio started writing these songs, and I was like, fucking, that sounds like The Cure. That sounds like Depeche Mode. That sounds like this. Like, this sounds like what we were always trying to do. And so we were like, it doesn't fit with the other band. So it has to be something different. It has to be something brand new.
Yeah.
And so that's how Occults came together.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, like Jesus, man, you brought up so much because Orgy was like, of course, new metal, all that. But when I heard Orgy, I was like, this is the music of the future. Like it felt like everything was dipped in chrome. That's how like futuristic it sounded to me. And I was like, this is the future of music. Now it's kind of shaped it and shifted and this type, but it was one of those like it blew my world apart that I started like looking into synthesizers, shit like that, you know, and then getting into more electronic based and even just like bands like Kill Hannah. I have such a funny story where it was me and my girlfriend at the time. We were walking around the main street of Columbia, Missouri, and one of her friends' boyfriends came into town, and he was staying at a hotel there. And so we're walking to the hotel, and I see these two dudes. I mean, you can tell usually most musicians, if they're carrying this big gear, they got piercings, tattoos, you're going, that guy's a musician. So we're walking in, we all kind of walk into this hotel together. And I was like, they look familiar. And I was like, I looked at, like, we're all in the elevator, and I look down, and they have a bag, and it has a Kill Hannah sticker on it. And I was like, oh shit, you guys are in Kill Hannah. And they're like, yeah, we're playing at Mojo's. And I was like, color us there. We're going to be there to see you guys. And so we went there, hung out with them, all this other stuff. But dude, Kill Hannah, God, again, you just named off so many things that really influenced me. It's so weird, dude.
We
So
were probably at that show too.
I was about to say, were we at that show? I think we may have been at that show.
that's so
My
awesome.
big
We would follow them anywhere. Like if they were remotely Midwest, we would go and catch them.
Yeah,
especially Columbia, and like and Columbia, Missouri was the only place near St. Louis that had a Jimmy John's at the time. So we would always go to the Jimmy John's in Columbia.
Yes, it was right across the street from East Side Tavern, which was my favorite place to drink at because it was all horror, science fiction-y. Every time drink, go to Jimmy John's. That's so crazy, dude. That's awesome. Oh my gosh, yeah. And I saw Kill Hannah open for Mindless Self-Indulgence at Pops. Oh man,
That is one that I can't say that I went to that show.
Yeah.
Mindless Self-Indulgence was funny because like they always like they kind of scared me a little bit. Like they were like
they felt gross, and I didn't want to.
Now I see why, right?
Because I knew a lot of people that were really into mindless self-indulgence and like were trying to get me into it, and I just could not. They just seemed so icky to me.
Yeah. Oh, they are now. I mean, just that whole backstory. But yeah, it's one of those like they were entertaining and just go, hey, they're in town. I need to be entertained for a while. Let's go see him. And he was just very, I mean, whether it was good or bad, he was very interactive with the crowd. And I saw them in Kansas City at, I think it was the Beaumont Club. And they gave him a wireless mic, which he took full advantage of and went outside, went to the bathroom, went to the bar, asked for some milk. It was like just the most outrageous, just wild, wild, wild show. And it was just like, oh, okay, these guys are really entertaining. And I just like the electronic aspect of it, where they were a band, but they had those electronic elements. And I think that's kind of what influenced me, is to go bring all the elements. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, take it or leave it, whether, he has a nasty history, but musically, I can say that at that moment, that was an influence on me. You know what I mean? So, yeah. But so musicians, were you guys naturally drawn to be musicians, or was it something that was kind of you were in band and it just kind of like grew that way? Or tell me about your kind of history in being a musician or learning to sing and all that kind of stuff.
So in my case, I mean, I kind of come from a family that does music in one way, shape, or form. My uncle played bass and guitar and stuff like that in various bands. There's pictures of me as like a 3, 4 year old holding a guitar, and um, that kind of helped stem things, I guess, for me. That started things out. But I never really considered playing music fully until I was an early teenager. And I'll never forget, my uncle had this guitar that was, I mean, it was some sort of like overseas, you know, terrible guitar that had been sitting in a basement forever. And I like that was kind of like, oh, okay. Like he goes, well, you can have it. But there was like so many issues with the guitar itself, but it was like a gateway into everything else. And I wound up honest that family value store that Patrick was talking about, 98. Um, the day after that show, I mean, I remember I was 14, and the day after that show, I started my first band. We didn't know how to play our instruments um, at all, but we slowly but surely, like I'm very much like a learning by ear kind of person. And so it's like, okay, well, what can I learn this Limp Bizkit song, or can I learn, whatever from the live Family Values tour album that came out? And I think that that was really what stemmed a lot into it. But I never really, like, I'll never admit to being like a good guitar player. I never learned anything. I think the most of a lesson that I ever took was like a CD that my parents bought me. And so much of it for me is just like, I hate to sound like that like Paul McCartney type of thing, but it was like Paul McCartney when you think about the way that he played and the way he never learned how to read music, just kind of knew what sounded good, what felt good. And that's exactly the way that I still approach it today, even, going on 40 years old. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'll still learn new stuff, but a lot of it is just from learning things that I love. If I go back and I listen to old Smiths records, and I love the way Johnny Marr plays guitar, so I want to learn this Smiths song, and it helps me to learn new techniques and apply those into what we're writing. But that was kind of my gateway into it. Singing was really not planned. I just happened to be the girl that I was dating that introduced me to The Cure. Like, I wanted to play Pictures of You for an event that was at my high school. And funny thing is that Patrick was at that thing too. That was right after I joined it. But that was kind of what got me into singing, was doing that. And I mean, I enjoyed it, before, but never really took it as like, I always thought of myself as being a guitar player in a band, and never thought of that I was going to be a vocalist. And I don't know, it's just, I mean, my mom sang in choirs and stuff like that all the time. And I was in choirs in, school. And I mean, I was in Catholic schools my whole life. So it was, choir was just like, okay, well, you're going to go sing church songs.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And that was something that kind of came more as a second nature thing to me. And I don't know, I just kept doing it.
Patrick, you got your backstory?
Yeah, my dad was a musician. So I grew up around it. You know, he had band practices in the basement my entire childhood, and he was a bass player, and I was always gravitated towards the drums. And you know, like he had, you know, a you know, a lot of drummers kind of came through all those years, but like I would always want to go down and like play on the drums. And my first attempt was trying to play guitar, and it just didn't like my fingers just didn't want to do the thing. And I still don't know, when I watch Emilio play, like I still have no idea how he does the things he does. um and so, you know, I once I knew I was not going to be a guitarist, I was like, I want to be a drummer. And so that was the thing. And I don't, and like I took some lessons, but I didn't want to listen. You know, I was like, I want to play double bass because I want to play like Korn, you know, and David Silveria. You know, it's like I want to play like that. And my drum teacher was like, you need to build up to that. And I was like, fuck that and fuck you. Like I'm
No, you're,
I
I
was,
would be exactly.
he literally was like, I have another student who has a double bass kick and he will sell it to you, but you have to go and audition for the school band because we went to the same high school. And I was like, sure. And so I went and I did the audition and it fucking sucked. I did not want to do it. And I gave him the $100 or whatever for the double bass kick and I never went back. It was like, I got the thing I wanted out of it. And so yeah, so I never really, you know, and I've been around a lot of really amazing drummers. So it's like I've never really risen to the level that like I wish I could have. But I did, you know, I will say that like I'm one of those drummers that like I can hear a song once and I can play it for you.
Yeah.
You know, I can't play like fucking Neil Peart, you know, but like
Who
um
can?
yeah, who can? But it's, you know, but and I love like, you know, they've got all these like Drumeo videos where they bring the drummers in and they're hearing songs for the first time and then they got to play them. It's like I love watching people and their natural technical skill just dissect a song and do all these really crazy things. I mean, one of the best ones is like Mike Portnoy listening to Taylor Swift for the first time. It's unbelievable because he like nails the song. It sounds exactly like Shake It Off, but he's still playing like Dream Theater. And I can't do
Right.
that. I can't fucking do that. So you know, what I can do is play 4-on-the-floor dance patterns, and I'm really good at memorizing patterns. And so that's why it worked for our previous band. And you know, like I said, with the cults, like we never expected to play live. And so when the opportunity came up that like, hey, we're gonna play the first occult show, I have all these songs in my head, right? Like I've been listening to them for the last 3.5 years.
Yeah.
But it was like actually sitting down and figuring out what has to be played and what can't be played. Like that was a challenge. And but it all comes down to just patterns and muscle memory. And you know, once you get like a song like Hot Crucible is really just 3 patterns over and over again. So it's just making sure you have them memorized and know which part comes where. And once you've got that down, it's fine. So it actually freed me up because, you know, I never sang backing vocals in the past, but like uh because all I have to in the cults, it's like all I have to do is like memorize the patterns and have the muscle memory. I actually do sing backing vocals in the cults. So yeah, so I mean that's my story. I wish I was more
If
talented drummer, but
if I can touch back on your attempt at playing guitar and looking at me and how I do things, bad technique is the answer to
I
that. That is how I do
I
everything.
I
So
say the same thing about my film editing. Like don't take advice from me. I got bad technique. Don't do it.
Do you you mentioned film editing? I went to school for a little bit to do film. What are you just kind of dabbling in it? Did you go to school for
Oh
like
no.
okay.
Yeah, no. I've been a professional film editor for almost 15 years now.
Really?
And I got started by you know, when the previous band dissolved, I
Mhm.
needed something to do. I decided to go back to school, and I'd started going to school for in college for for film, I wanted to be a director. And I had taken some classes for editing, and so I really liked where that was. It was like right at the start of like digital filmmaking. So I ended up bringing that into Nothing Still, and like we started doing like video blogs, and this was like right when YouTube was starting.
Yeah, I remember that.
So we did those, and then that turned into like we did a music video. And when I started going back to school and the band had gone away, I was like, well, I know all these bands that need music videos. I'll just go start making music videos for everybody. And so that's how that turned into that. And I kind of honed my skills as an editor and started doing actual editing jobs and commercials and feature films and stuff. And so, yeah, that's what I've been doing. So I'm in Los Angeles, and my full-time gig is a film editor. Cool. And, I've edited a few movies for Shudder, Scare Me, Who Invited Them, Blood Relatives, and then I've got a big movie coming out this fall for Neon called Shelby Oaks.
Yep.
And so that's what I do during the day, and then at night I make music with Emilio.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of film, and I always wanted to get into, but like once you get into the meat of like movie, it's like, first of all, I would have had to leave St. Louis because there's obviously nothing here when it comes to that kind of stuff. And but then, it's one of those things where I was gonna work under John Russo, who worked on Night of the Living Dead, the original with George Romero. I was gonna go to his school and then kind of learn under him. He really liked my portfolio or whatever, but then finances got in the way, time got in the way, jobs got in the way, shit like that. But that's awesome. I love hearing that you're able to like music, film editing and stuff like that. And believe me, when it comes to Shudder, like I am a Shudder fan. Everything on there, that's my number one favorite streaming platform. And I'm a huge fan of like Joe Bob, The Last Drive-In, all that, like right up my alley. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so geez, I just lost my track of okay, so you guys started working together. Oh, I was gonna say, how did you guys were able to translate everything that you kind of worked on in the studio with music and went, all right, let's go live? How were you guys able to kind of take everything from the studio and kind of translate it into a stage show?
That was a bit of a challenge. I am a really big I'm on Reddit a lot. And so I started diving
Sometimes
into
not reading about music.
Most times not reading about music. But I started diving into like how these bands were running backing tracks, because like I knew how we had done. I mean, with the old band, we had run backing tracks since so many times, but it seemed like we always changed mediums. And I think we knew going into it that like a lot of these bands do mostly backing tracks. I mean, there's bands that are just, two-piece that sound like full bands because they're running all these backing tracks. And I wanted to figure out the best way of being able to do all of that. Which it just so happened that before the last band dissolved, we were starting to run main stage for live performance for our backing tracks. And we just kind of had to break down, because I'm trying to get out of the habit of when I'm writing the musical parts to it, where I'm like, hey, it's no big deal if I have like 5 guitars on here, but I have to try and break that habit where I'm like, okay, we have to be able to pull this off live, where, you have to sit back and go, okay, what can I play and what can I sing at the same time? Because I don't take into consideration what I can play and sing live. So like a lot of the lead lines that I write, I'm like, there's no way I can sing these vocals over this. And so that's kind of what I had to do with breaking down the stems. So I took all of the stems from our recordings and broke them in individually. It was like, okay, so this stem, I'm gonna play the lead line here, but I'm gonna play the rhythm line in this part. and just kind of build the stems that way. And I found that that was kind of the best way of doing it with for Patrick too, was just, okay, here are all of the drum parts individualized, and tell me what you're going to be comfortable playing and what you can play. Because like, I'm not a drummer, and I tend to, if I'm writing, like if I'm getting a framework down for a song, I tend to get carried away where I'm like, hey, it's okay if you're playing like five different things at one time as a drummer. I'm like, oh yeah, the story's only two hands. So we'll have to figure this out. And
Yeah,
running them by him to go, what can you do and what can't you do?
there's some stuff in especially in our first EP, Sacred Heart, that I'm like, because we had never thought we were gonna play. I was just like, I can't fucking play that. I mean, you give me a heart attack. Like, uh, yeah, and I had always imagined it being at like a sitting kit, a sitting drum kit, with lots of crashes and all of that stuff, and like having a bass player and an extra guitar player and or a keyboardist or whatever. Like that's how I imagined it going. And we had been seeing a lot of bands like Wingtips and Twin Tribes and and then we dabbled with having extra bandmates, but then we just quickly realized that you know it works better if it's just the two of us and we have control over the music in that way. Um and so we utilize backing tracks, but like we're performing. And what I love about it is that like I brought in my Roland V drums that I've had since the orgy days, and bought a whole new drum module because the drum module I had was over 20 years old. And we were able to now, which what I couldn't do before, but we could do now, is that we could actually sample out all of the drum sounds from the actual tracks. So you're getting an authentic, when you see us live, you're getting like this authentic experience where it's like the sounds are the sounds. And if I were playing with an acoustic kit, it wouldn't be that. So I love that. I get really excited. So what we'll usually do is listen to the track and pick it apart and figure out like what can physically be played and what has to be a backing track. And so, more recently on this last tour, we brought in Truth or Desire, and we're like, okay, now how can I physically play this for 3 minutes? So figuring out which parts, would be the toms, and then which parts the snare, and which parts the hi-hat, and what I can do with my arms. So it's a lot of fun, but also a little stressful. But
For
like I
me,
said,
it's I mean, for me, it's all fun. I mean, I love, because I mean that's my chance that I get to really nerd out. I mean, I spend so much time in this room, and when I get to dive into making the making the live show parts work, I have a lot of fun sitting around doing research on this stuff. Like, hey, how are these bands doing it? How are these bands doing it? Because I think coming into this, we wanted the live show to be, yes, to sound like the album, but to be a show.
right.
And when you're two people as opposed to a 4 or 5 piece band, there's you have to make up for all of that energy. And when you see some of these, I've definitely, and I won't even name names, because I mean, there's definitely, you see 2 piece bands that go out there and they're locked to their mic stand, or they're like locked to their one little spot. And I'm like, no, I want energy. We have to bring the energy of a full band to our live performances. And that's another thing that comes into play with like, what should I play live? What should I not play live when it comes to guitar parts? And oh, if I don't play this part here, I can be a little bit more, I can move a little bit more on stage. I can give a little bit better of a show. Um, and, before, in our old bands, it's like we never had this technology, or we weren't smart enough to figure it out to go, okay, well, we can just have a rack system that, all of our music, we can just kind of plug and play. I give the snake to the sound guy, and the sound guy and all I have to tell him is plug it in, turn it up, and that's all you need to do. But of course, it still, sound guys find ways to fuck it up. But that's story of my life.
That's our biggest hurdle right now is still getting past the sound guys.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's one, it's if they if they're ex roadies for Ozzy or Motley Crue, and well, what do you mean there's no drums, or you gotta mic this and mic, it's just like, no, just plug in and just make sure everything sounds good. That's all I care about. Yeah.
No, listen, I
Yeah.
don't give a shit. Our show in St. Louis got fucked up by the sound guy.
Oh, really? Tell me about that. I mean, if
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck.
Oh yeah, no, neither do I.
The yeah, this guy showed up, you know,
An hour late.
an hour late, like literally probably a half an hour before doors opened, and we were already on stage ready to go. And he sound checks us, we get everything set, and we're like, okay, we're gonna backline.
Yeah.
And he's like, you guys aren't playing first? And we're like, no, we're the headliner. He goes, why'd you sound check? And we were like, motherfucker, this is how it works. Like, who are you?
Yeah, I had to have some words with him because it's like you could tell he was like an old head that probably has done like a lot of state fairs.
Mhm.
And when he showed up, we go and we finish sound check and we go to backline and he goes, well, how are you going to play your instruments when they're up there against the wall? And I said, well, we're backlining. And he's like, well, if I'd have known that, I would have sound checked the first band first. And I'm like, well, then how would the other band sound check? I'm
Right.
like, wait, are you planning on sound checking the bands in between bands? It's like, well, yeah, that's usually how I do it. I said, we have a DJ for this show that's playing in between bands. You are not going to sound check these bands in between them, or you're going to figure out a way of doing it.
Yeah.
Because we have somebody that is being paid to be here in between bands. And it just, the guy you could tell was just a very old head, did not know, like, it probably blew his mind that like I didn't have an amp, like something like that. It's just like it's like this guy was just, he was an interesting one.
The good thing is that you learn from each show, and the bands that have been doing this longer than we have, they know better than we do. And so we're trying to pick up as much information as we can from the established acts as to like how to
Time you're taking notes, okay, I'll remember that.
Yeah. And it's like, and you do get a show where it's like the sound is great. We played in Columbus, Ohio, and the sound was fantastic. It's like you get these people who care and do a good job. But then but you don't know until you walk in there. And so the best thing that we can do is be as dialed in as possible before giving it to the sound guy. So the only reason I'm bringing this up is I'm apologizing in advance if you come see an occult show and you're like, yeah, man, the fucking levels were all over the place. It ain't on us.
Right.
Like we're doing our part.
The way that I've done so much in our tracks that like the only thing that the sound guy should need to do is turn them up, and actually they should be fairly level across the board.
Yeah.
And everything should sound fine. But obviously I'm no live sound guy, and that's one of the things that like I'm starting to try and dive into a little bit more, because in a perfect world, I mean, right now we give front of house 6 channels to run all of our stuff. In the end, what I would really like to be able to do is dial in all of our own live sound to where I can just give a mixed 2-track to the front of house and go, just turn it up. Don't worry about anything else. I mean, I think the biggest thing that has really, really helped us is going in-ears. Doing in-ears has made the setups, the sound checks so much easier, because we have our sounds dialed in. We know what we're hearing up on stage. We don't have to worry about, the front wedges causing feedback because I'm using a vocal pedal for effects. I don't have to worry about any of those things that a lot of the older bands that are still, that don't want to move with what's going on with the times, that they have to deal with. And having the in-ears has been just like a godsend, and I don't know why I didn't do it a lot sooner.
Right, exactly.
And my hearing's better.
I know. It's amazing how you can like you notice how easier it is when it's in ear versus a monitor, which could just, I mean, I've being a drummer, if you don't have the monitor going, it's just like it's nerve-wracking because you're trying to keep time. And then at some shows, I remember I would have to have a metronome in my ear, which is like, okay, I gotta learn how to deal with the tick tock tick while I'm trying to hear the band at this. Yeah. So,
I'll
I'll,
tell you what though, I put off custom molds
Mhm.
for years. I mean, I'd always wanted them and
Yeah,
just like never got around to it. And I mean, game changing. Like spend like if you're a drummer, if you're listening to this and you're a drummer and like you're thinking about getting in your monitors, like go to an audiologist, get the shit done, like spend the money. It is 1,000% worth it. It's
absolutely.
incredible.
Yep, absolutely. Tell me about that first occult show when you guys were prepping, preparing, going, okay, this is us. We're going to show the world our live show. Tell me about that experience, the prep up, the nervousness. Was there anything like that? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, we had to. So, um, we always said that we would only play a show if it was like if it was special or if it was like an event or something like that. Um, Emilio relocated to Denver a year or so ago, and we saw that Actors was coming through.
Ooh, yep.
Now
Talk
this was like very early last year, and I was like, "What do you think, man? Like, what's it like?" The show wasn't until November, but like they announced this show like in like March or something like that. And I was like, "What do you think, man? Like, do you think like could is there any way we could get on that show?" And we are like, "Oh, whatever." And I'm also a firm believer in manifestation. I think it's a real thing,
yeah.
and and I had been I had applied us for Dark Force Fest the year before, and we didn't get it. But I could see it in my head. I could see us playing live. I could see us playing at Dark Force Fest. And it took a couple months, but like within the same week, we found out that we got Dark Force Fest and we got this actor show in Denver. And so all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, we got to figure this out. Like it's July. It's July of last year. And
Yeah.
we were like, oh, okay, well, we got to figure this out. We got like 4 months to figure out like what we're gonna do. And so I had to fly back to St. Louis for something, and then like I had to like pay to ship all my drums back to Los Angeles. Like I said, like had to buy a new module, new cables, all of that stuff. And then Amelia the same thing, like, had to like re-up his gear, and we're still doing that, but like all of those things in preparation. And then on top of that, you had to like learn the songs. And so Emilio came to LA in August or no, October.
Yeah.
Uh and we rented a studio and we rehearsed. We had been rehearsing privately, and then like we rehearsed together. And then when we went to Denver to play the show, we rented a studio for 2 days, rehearsed in Denver, and just got it down. And but yeah, there was a lot of like also like figuring out like what were the songs like, and we wanted to have sort of like a good representation of our first EP, Sacred Heart, and then the Rituals album, which had just come out. So like finding the right songs, crafting the right set list, and all of the stuff. But yeah, and I think that like every show we've done since then, like I said, it's like you're picking up a little bit of information that you're like, how do we make this 5-10% better each time? But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was definitely like not nervous, but also nervous at the same time.
That makes sense.
I
I
was I
realized, I think for me, it's one of those things that I realized a few different things from that show. Because I mean, that show that was prior to doing like full in-ears for everybody. I had just gotten the in-ear set right before then. Um, and there were just there, you can come out of that show, and I think the most I learned from that particular show, it's like since then it's been like a little bit more fine tuning. Honestly, the biggest thing though that I realized is that over time, I get really bad stage anxiety now. For doing this for so long, you'd think that I'd be good to go,
No.
but it felt like kind of a proving thing, because the thing about when I moved to Denver, which was actually just almost past two years ago now, um, I'm I'm a people person. I like going out and meeting new people, um, which is odd because I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of people, but I got out more so for promotion and just started meeting people around town, and I was really really thankful. I was at a Male Tears show. Male Tears played at a club out here, and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go to the show because Male Tears actually has like name dropped us prior, which is kind of cool. So I show up to the show and I meet this guy, and he comes up to me and he's like, man, he goes, I see you kind of all around the city and at all these shows, and you're always by yourself. Like, what's your deal? And I'm like, dude, I just moved here and I'm, just going out to these shows and stuff. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to introduce you to some people. Well, it turns out that he is the guy who runs the Colorado Goth Society out here. And Alberto and I became very, very quick friends. Still talk all the time, but that opened a lot of windows and a lot of doors for us. Like, because of that, I met the promoter that was putting on that show, and he does pretty much every single like dark wave or goth adjacent show that comes to town. At least from our main genre, he handles a lot of them, and even the promoter and I clicked right away, and talk quite a bit still, and it was just one of those things where I given him, at the time we had these little cards that just had occults on it and had a QR code to go to Spotify, and I had given him the card that night, and it was actually like a month or two later that he reached out and he's like, hey, I actually just got a chance to listen to you guys, and like, I really love you guys. Like, let's, we could definitely work on some shows. And that was at that time we were wanting to do the actors thing. And so I just put it in his ear, and he's like, yeah, let me see what they're working with, and let me see, if they're bringing any other bands, and we'll kind of see what happens. And he wound up coming back, and he's like, yeah, if you guys want it, let's do it. And it was just such a cool thing to like, I hadn't been on stage since like prior to COVID. And being back on stage, it's like, yeah, of course, my anxiety's going ballistic, but at the same time, it's like, I feel at home here. Like, this is what I love. And every show that we've done since, I feel like I just get more and more comfortable, and I just realize that this is the stuff that I've been wanting to do since being a young teenager, and I'm getting to do more now in with the Cults than I've ever done in any of the other bands that we've been in. And so it's just a really cool feeling. And yeah, tangent, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a thing that like has taken some getting used to, because we were so used to just being a local band in our previous band. Like we were from St. Louis and we would play regionally. I think like the furthest out we played was, I mean, technically Atlanta, but I mean, we played Chicago and Kansas City.
Greenland. Like, well, we did play Greenland.
Greenland for a show, but it's like that was it, and now with the Cults, because we sort of like are of no place, we go to all these towns that like we've never been to before, and you're meeting amazing people that you don't know who have discovered you. So we earlier this year we did the Pacific Northwest in Seattle and Portland, and neither of us have ever played there before, and both shows had a ton of people, and both shows they were really excited about it, and like people coming up and telling us these like incredible stories, and like one guy had our limited edition vinyl and he brought it with him to the show for us to sign. And it just blows you away because I mean, I don't know, I'm just so used to like playing in front of like family and friends. And so that's the thing. It's like and also we've got years on us, and years in between having been musicians. So we are super appreciative of the people who do come out. And, if you've made it this far in the podcast, like I want to stress, like, come up to us, talk to us, like introduce yourselves. Like, we will talk to you because we want to meet everybody and we want to hear how you found us and why you came to the show, all of those things. Like, we are not standoffish, we are not private people. Like, please come and like talk to us, and we are happy to meet with you too, because it's just such an it's such a we're lucky to be doing this, especially at our ages, that like that for people to even come out or to like buy an album or stream and listen to it, like it's unreal. So yeah, we're definitely highly blessed in that regard.
Right. And I mean, just planting that seed, you had, I can't think of his name, but actors, didn't he produce rituals for you guys?
Oh, Jason, no, he did mastered our song Communion.
Master. That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
was
I
reading
would
some,
I would love to do an album with Jason. I don't know if it'll happen, but like, hey, I might manifest
plant
that.
the seeds, plant the seeds, man.
Yeah.
Tell me,
Jason, if
Jason,
you're
you're
listening,
listening,
this is
you know how to get a
yeah.
hold.
I'll send it to him. So,
Let's make an album together.
tell me about, because I know you guys are LA, Colorado, and everything like that. Tell me about the songwriting process. Kind of what's your schedule when it comes to that? When you start getting influenced, do you go right into the studio? You being a guitar player, do you immediately go for the guitar, keyboards? What's your kind of schedule when it comes to writing? Even lyrically, do you write notes? Do you speak into your phone? Kind of tell me about that whole process that you go through.
So when it comes to writing, like thankfully I have a studio that I've, you know, kind of culminated and put together and everything. So, everything occults can be done here.
Mhm.
Um, Typically when I'm writing, the weird thing is for not being a drummer, that's always what I start with. I always start with the drums just because I want to write. Like I always like to have like a framework to base things off of. Um, I tend to just sit down with on like I have a machine sitting over here and just finger tap drums and thank God for quantizing and things that make me sound like I'm not so terrible. Um, but when I get the framework of a song, I'll do drums and then I'll do bass and I'll start kind of adding in maybe some little sequences here and there for synth lines. And I'll use that then to start doing guitars. And of course, I have a ton of fun recording guitars. It's always a blast for me. Once I have that type of framework, that's usually once I send over to Patrick, I'm like, hey, here's this idea that I'm working on. What do you think? Patrick will come back and say, like, yeah, no. Or he is like, hey, I would, do this different thing with the drums, or I'll send him the MIDI stems and he may reprogram the drums. And we'll work on structure wise how we're going to, okay, maybe if we take, part B here and let's put it actually in the part A over here. Um, and
That's really
once
my
we're
that's my big contribution to the songwriting, is that like as a film editor, I just mostly am looking at how to structure the song and things that essentially just editing. Like that's the thing. So as he's building them, I will just come in and say, like, what if we do this instead? And then what if this part is here? No, no, no. And like, oh, we can just get rid of that. Or so.
yeah, and I mean, I think that what's great though is that where the real collaborative process comes in is with the lyric writing, because a lot of times if I can't think of melodies off the top of my head or if I can't think of any type of lyrics, I try to write some kind of like a bullshit lyric um, to kind of just have a slight idea and record some scratch vocals over it. And Patrick then can take the melodies himself and go, okay, well, let's write, and we can start working on the lyrics. Primarily, Patrick handles a lot of the lyrics. Um, and it's kind of neat because it's almost like this, Bernie to Elton type of thing that we have together. And I mean, we always have, though. I mean, it's always kind of been, even in our old band.
I wouldn't call myself Bernie Taupin. I'm the Bernie Taupin of goth music. That's me.
Yeah. It's, it's one of those things that, I think that's really what helps to kind of hone things in a little bit more, and we may run through, 6 or 7 versions of lyrics and melodies and stuff and go, okay, well, this doesn't work, or like, this is not quite where we want it to be. So what's missing from it? Okay, let's sit back for a little bit on it and see where we want to go. And then a lot of cases, we'll fight back and forth of, okay, well, no, this sucks. No, it doesn't. Like, no, trust me. And it's a lot of back and forth. Like Patrick was saying earlier, it's like, I mean, we're brothers and best friends. So it's like we can kind of just work through those situations. Because I think that's where he and I will clash the most, is when we're in the creative process. But I think that also helps with the fact that it's only the two of us, because when, for us, when we've had more hands in the pot, it starts to water down what we're really going for. So when it's just the two of us and we can just sit there and fight it out over a couple of days of, cussing each other out for a little bit, and then come back to actually, level out and go, oh, okay, now we see where we need to go with this. And it's really probably a toxic writing style, but it works for us and it works well.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, as an editor, like, that's part of my job, is to like sit in a room with directors who have big egos and tell them their movie sucks. It's like, sometimes you have to sit there and go like, hey, look, like, this thing that you're super precious about, like, it doesn't work. So like, we got to find a way to fix it. Mm-hmm. And so I sort of bring that energy into the songwriting process as well, because if there's something that's not clicking for me, I think of myself as like Emilio's first audience, right? So if he's writing a song in a vacuum, then like, of course it sounds great to him. But if I hear it for the first time and I'm like, ooh, like, it's like, how do we fix that? How do we make it something good? And that's just all collaboration across filmmaking and music and anything that, like, you have to sort of listen to the audience a little bit too. So
I think that I was going to say, like, I think that for me, that's over time has helped me to not be married to things. When I'm writing, it's like, because now I know a lot of times when I'm writing something, I go, okay, I don't think Patrick is going to like this part, but I know that I wrote it. I'm going to pass it by him. If he likes it, cool. If he doesn't, that's fine too, because like, I try not to be. I get more, especially lately, I get more married to the idea more so than the individual parts to it. So it's like, as a whole, am I happy with this? Yes, I'm happy with this, but I'm also open to whatever needs to be done with it, and I'm not married to any of the particular parts to it. So it helps to kind of like, it's opened my mind, and it's kind of like, I don't want to say calmed my ego, because I never really felt like I had much of an ego, at least in occults. That that's helping me to not be married to certain parts, and if things need to change, and they need to change, and they wind up coming out better in the long run, to where both of us are happy with it, and we could be excited to play this music.
And we are our own producers, because if we were in the room with an outside producer, like, they would be doing the same thing. We would come in with demos and they would say, oh yeah, this is actually trash, but like, you should do this instead. So like we are self-producing in that way. We're like trying to get ahead of it. And I think it works in this dynamic because if we were both just sitting in the room together doing it, we would probably love what the thing is. But like because he does it and then I look at it and I'm sort of like the first voice, it's like it helps it develop the same way that like a producer would help develop, or
Right.
like if we had other band members, I guess that they would probably put their 2 cents in. But I also just wanted to talk about like with lyrics. I think that over time I've figured out that you know you sort of have this instinct that like every lyric has to be like Shakespeare. And it's like over time I've sort of figured out that like do what works for the song, and if it doesn't make sense somehow it will. And yeah, there have just been lyrics that I've pulled out of my ass and I'm like, well, that sounds cool, I don't know what it means, you know but it's it works for the song and we're gonna go with it. And I especially like the other thing is with occult sort of speaking through like these kind of characters in a way, with a song like Crystal Coffins, we're talking essentially about like having sex with somebody and fire and then her burying you in her own grave. Like, well, I'm not doing that on a Saturday night. I wish I was, but I'm not. So and Hot Crucible is kind of the same way. Hot Crucible is a song that's essentially two two people on a first date and asking questions to each other and like slowly learning. And it's sort of like an ode to the girls that we dated when we were like 16 and 17 years old. It's like, oh, you've got all these cuts on your leg, that's very interesting, tell me more about that. Like, things like that. So it's these things that we're pulling from our own life, but they're also very fictional.
I think that you bring up a good point about the lyrics and making things overcomplicated, because oddly enough I was just listening to a podcast. Johnny Marr was on a podcast the other day, and they were talking about his writing process. And you know he's obviously a fantastic guitar player, he's a fantastic musician, and he talks about how songs come really easy to him. He can sit down and write a song, but when it comes to lyrics, it's it it's so easy to get overcomplicated and to just overcomplicate the actual lyric itself, of, oh, it needs to be this type of like artsy, or it needs to be, I need to use like strange words that no one else uses to make it very I guess when you look at like Johnny Marr, when you compare to like the way Morrissey would write, where it's like this very strange lyrical content, but at the end of the day, you go back to realize that like, no, I just need to kind of keep it simple, and it doesn't need to be overly complicated just to send the message that you're trying to do. And I think that that's something that we, in the past, I don't want to say struggled with, but it's like we do tend to overcomplicate sometimes and come to realize that, oh, wait, no, why don't we just do this simple lyric? This works.
Yeah, keep it simple stupid is a real thing.
Oh,
For
absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely. And that's I mean, I think we're all again, you said our own worst critics, but we also I think we beat each other up a little bit more going you're trying to find that balance where you're going, I'm influenced by this. Because I hear something, I go, I'm influenced by it, and I'm going to kind of create and kind of filter that. But then you start beating yourself up because then you're like, wait, does it sound too much like this? Does it sound like I'm ripping this person off, or is this my homage? There's this whole internal battle where you're going, just keep creating, and then you're going, does this sound stupid? Does this sound like this? Does this sound, you just start kind of fighting with one side of your brain and the other, and it's like, okay, I just gotta step aside, put this away, and then come back at it when I have when the demons aren't yelling at me.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, if you're a musician or a young musician or you're looking for advice in any way, like all creatives have anxiety and we are all our biggest critics. And so it doesn't matter what level you're at, like you could be sitting around thinking like my music's garbage. Well, I got news for you. Like Tom York from Radiohead thinks his music's garbage. Like that's just how it is. I'm sure Paul McCartney has written some songs where he's like, that's rubbish.
Yeah.
So
Wonderful, wonderful Christmas time.
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah. So yeah, so it's just it is how it is. So like you got to kind of get that out of your head where you know, yeah, the lyric might be kind of but somebody's gonna like it somewhere, you know, or it's a guitar line or whatever. Like somebody's gonna like it. That's gonna be the thing that like they lock into, and that's what's amazing about art. It could be interpreted any way.
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say you already just answered one of the questions I usually end with the podcast, but Emilio, do you have any advice for anybody who's listening, who's artist, musician, or just wanting to, listen to a podcast to kind of, release for the day? Do you have your own sort of advice that you have that you kind of hold on to and would like to tell people about?
For me, I would say stop trying to make the music that you think people are gonna like and start making the music that you love. Because at the end of the day, like when you're making this art, it's your art and somebody's going to relate to it. You know, that's how we started this. And, you know, my whole thing has always been do this until it stops being fun. And I have yet, you know, over 20 years later, 25, 26, almost 30 years later now, like I still have fun. And when you stop thinking about what the mass audiences are going to think about what you're making is when your real creativity can show and make what you're happy with. That's always been the thing. If you get fans, hey, that's a perk. But if it's something that you need to get out, get it out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'll piggyback off of that and say that I've known a lot of bands who were chasing a sound or like trying to mimic another band or another success, and they never got anywhere. And we have been really lucky to just make music that we love, that the two of us enjoy, and put it out there and hope that people find it. And you know what? People have, and like we've gotten this far and we're touring the country and possibly the world soon, where it's like we were just doing what we enjoyed.
Absolutely.
So
Cool.
do that and live your life.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you guys so much. I think we pretty much nailed every question. I really appreciate it. It was funny because I'm taking notes and you guys already talked about lyrics. I was like, scratch, scratch. So perfect. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You guys have been wonderful. I encourage everybody who's listening to this, if you've made it this far, check out Occults, follow them on Instagram. I'll have everything in the description, their Bandcamp. I encourage Bandcamp because I want you to buy their music. But if you're into streaming, stream their music, everything like that. Check out their shows if they're coming around. Just kind of keep an eye on their Instagram and their. Do you guys have a website up and going right now?
Yeah, cultsofficial.com, and almost all social media you can find us at the Cults Official.
Okay, perfect. And then yeah, so check see if they're coming and everything like that. And yeah, keep track of them, follow them, tell them to say hi. Say hi to them if you're a fan. Please let them know how much you love them. Don't be afraid to ever come up to anybody. You know, hit them up on Instagram, or whatever on, and just let them know how much you appreciate their music. That is probably the biggest reward a musician could have. So, yep, that's all I just wanted to say. Thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you
Justin.
so much, Justin.
Yep, thanks, guys.